Hello everyone, Tom Pounder here, and we are wrapping up our series on initiative and talking about Nehemiah. Now, whenever you're doing a big project or whenever you're doing any kind of project at all, sometimes you can just run around all over the place, like run around and doing this and doing that and doing this, and there's so much for you to do that you lose sight of all the great stuff that's happening at that moment. And so what I want us to do right now is read a story about how the completion of the wall comes about and what Nehemiah encourages them to do as they wrap up building the wall, and how they can celebrate all that God's done, and how you can celebrate all that God's doing in your life as well. So pause the video, read this story, and when you're done, press play, and we'll continue from there. Okay, so the wall is rebuilt in only 52 days. Can you imagine doing it in 52 days? They didn't have all the technology kind of stuff that we have today. It was much more difficult to rebuild back then. And they did it in 52 days. That's amazing. That's actually worth celebrating. However, the people of Israel were just so sad because they blew it. See, the reason why Jerusalem was destroyed in the first place was that they had forgotten about God. They had done a lot of bad things. And God just allowed them, he stopped protecting them, he allowed them to be captured and allowed the wall to be taken down because they had kind of forgotten about God and they didn't really care about God anymore. And so the thing was that they were all bummed out. They're like, oh, we're just such bad people. And Nehemiah's like, whoa, 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 whoa. God loves you. God cares for you. God's going to protect you. God's going to guide you. And he encouraged them to say, let's celebrate what has happened. Let's celebrate all that God's done. And in our lives, we can think, hey, listen, we've done some bad things in our lives, and we've disobeyed our parents or done this or done that. They're bad things that you've done. But the reality is that God is still there. God still loves you. God still cares for you, and God still wants a relationship with you. And we can celebrate great stuff that God has done. In fact, that's what our bottom line is today. Look for ways to celebrate what God has done. There are things that God is doing. We got to just look for them. Look for ways to celebrate what God has done. Don't get down on yourself. Let the past worry about the past. Focus on the future. Focus about following God. And focus on celebrating all that God has done. Because guess what? God is doing a lot all around us. If we just open up our eyes, we can celebrate all that God has done. And that's what Nehemiah encouraged them to do, and that's what they ended up doing. So I want to encourage you, look for ways to celebrate what God has done. Hey, as also we wrap up this series, I also want to look at the memory verse we've been looking at all month long. It's Colossians 3:23. Work at everything you do with all your heart. Work as if you're working for the Lord. Hey, even though we're moving on to another series next week, hey, work at everything that you do as if you're working for God, not for anybody else. Don't worry about what other people are saying or doing. Work at it as if you're working for God and no one else. And give your heart at it and see how you can bless God, but also how God blesses you from working at it with all your heart. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you take initiative the rest of the week, and I hope you celebrate the rest of the week all that God has done. And I'll see you next week with a whole new story. Have a great week, everyone.